Wheels, where so far in 12 episodes, Guy Smith and I have covered just about every discipline of four-wheeled motorsport, from karting to WRC, Formula One to NASCAR, IndyCar, sports cars, and we're about to combine almost all of those with today's guest too. But first, we have to touch on what happened last weekend, because, you know, I run a racetrack called Cadwell Park, and Guy drives racing cars. And we combined those two things, and Guy had a bit of success, taking back-to-back wins in his historic touring car debut at my circuit. I would say it was a bit of a busman's holiday, but given you haven't had a chance to go racing this year yet, it must have been good to be back on track, Guy.
Oh, it was. It was absolutely amazing. I was racing a Lotus Cortina, so pre-66 Lotus Cortina, and it was just so much fun. I mean, first of all, the car, you know, what a car to drive. I mean, the car's sliding around, moving around, no paddle shift, you know, just you really have to kind of drive the car, and it's really engaging. So what a blast that was. And of course,
and we have to say it's an Andrew Jordan prepared car, and it's a brand new car. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, so the car is great, and it's just nice to be back. Actually, just been back at a racetrack again. You know, it wasn't quite normal. I mean, obviously we had to wear, you know, face masks and all the rest of it, but nevertheless, it was still great to be back in a race car and feel the adrenaline of driving a car again. And of course, standing starts in the historic races, so something that I've not done for probably 20 years. So when I lined up on the grid in pole position, I was suddenly thinking, what do I do now? You know, to try and remember. So no, it was great fun. And of course, my dad was racing as well, so it was nice to be able to do that with him. And yeah, it was a great weekend.
So you'll be hoping to get back-to-back weekend wins when you go to Brands Hatch this weekend with this is the historic sports car club, isn't it? The Brands Super Prix, one of my favourite race events.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't raced on Brands GP for probably about 20 years, so it's straight into a 15-minute qualifying session and then the race. So it's going to be a baptism of fire, but I'm looking forward to it. And it's quite a lot different to the WEC car that I've been racing, the Ginetta. So it couldn't be more opposite. But as I said, it's still a racing car. It's got four wheels and a steering wheel, and just loving being back on the track.
Yeah, great result. It was good to have you at Cadwell. Now, today's guest earned himself the nickname Mad Max in a career that has so far seen stints in F1, IndyCar, sports cars. He holds the record for the most NASCAR race starts for a European driver, and we know from Jason Plato how hard it is to break into that door. Welcome to Spinning Wheels, Max Papis.
How are you guys doing?
Good. Max, unlike many of our guests so far, there was no family connection to motorsport. You just wanted to go racing. Tell us how it all came about.
I'm a very stubborn guy. You know, like I'm born in a really tiny village, 600 people, north of Italy, and the first memory of racing is watching my dad, watching F1 and see Gilles Villeneuve, taking the car right and left and sliding the car. And how everything came about, it was by pure chance. This guy that was friend of my dad had a race shop really near our house, about a mile away. He had some go-karts. Twice a week with my bicycle, I was passing in front of his place until I pestered him that much that he took me to the karting track, and that was it. He took me to the karting track. We rented a kart, a Cadet with a tire dismal, and I finished second on my first race with this other guy that's super famous that won. His name is Gianluca Beggio, that he dominated.
Beggio, I know Beggio, with the hair and the glasses.
Absolutely, and it was his third race, and it was my first race, and that was it. A lot of work, but a lot of passion for it that took me all around the world.
It's funny because I think karting in Italy, when I raced in the UK and we went to race in Italy, I mean, it's the absolute mecca for karting, isn't it? I mean, you've got all the big manufacturers, Birol, CRG, Calicart, Tony Kart, DAP, all of the big karting manufacturers are based in kind of northern Italy, aren't they? A lot of the engine builders also. I mean, and my sort of thoughts were, whenever I raced in Italy, the Italians were just like almost unbeatable. I mean, it was almost, yeah, they had such a hold on karting. They were so strong. It must have been difficult. It must have been competitive, wasn't it, for you kind of making that leap into karting?
I mean, you got it right. I have a very clear memory of those period where actually when I grew up a little bit, and I went from cadet and national racing all the way to international racing. And I remember racing with this guy. His name was David Coulthard, and he showed up to this races with a black chassis. I think I don't know if it was a zip chassis or something like that. And dude, he had no chance.
Yeah.
And I remember, the only one guy that was really, really amazing that was not linked to the Italian manufacturer was Alan McNish with Terry Fullerton. Terry was was actually running this, special chassis that Terry built for him. And I remember Alan being the master of the rain and winning the European Championship in open rod. So a lot of great memories. And the amazing things is that you got to meet people back then that they became heroes in the sport. And I remember racing in Australia in karting with Jan Magnussen, with David Coulthard. This guy, his name was Russell Ingall, super famous guy in V8 supercar, and with Jill DeFerran, all these other guys. And as you got it right, some of them, they couldn't really, prove exactly how good they were, because I think it was really tough not being in an Italian manufacturer chassis or engine, because they controlled everything.
Yeah.
So they had the best of the best, and it was fun. I thought I was going to only drive go-kart all my life.
Yeah.
I went to race cars when I was 19, but I was really happy to race go-kart. I had a small salary from a company called PCR.
Yeah.
I was under contract with Vega from the tire for testing.
Yeah.
And I was happy where I was, and then a few things came about, and actually I think you see the helmet behind, this guy Senna, Ayrton,
because we should say you were mentored by Senna. How did that come about?
How it came about was, do you remember that guy that I told you that was living near my house? The mechanic.
Yeah.
He was actually the engine tuner for Ayrton when Ayrton raced go-kart. And Ayrton used to live.
Who was that?
His name is Diego Mombelli.
Okay.
Mombelli, and he was working with another guy. His name is Mauro. That is actually
Mauro Villa?
Yeah.
He was my engine tuner.
Yeah. And these two guys, it happened that basically when Ayrton was 16, he was he spent a lot of time in the next near village of mine. I had no idea. Diego, my engine tuner, became kind of his second father, and Ayrton took me under his wing. When I was about 19, 18, I remember going every time he tested in Monza. He was always staying with me and my dad, in our house. And I remember being with him in Monaco when he finished second in the rain, and it was only me, my dad, and Diego watching him. Nobody really knew the guy.
Wow.
And I would definitely say, he mentored me, and he guided me. Actually, he even paid for one race for me to race with West Surrey Racing when I was 20 years old. And definitely without him, I would have not been able to go any further. And he guided me, and I'm glad I've been able to pay him back a little bit with satisfaction out of the things I did.
That's amazing.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah, what a story.
The helmet that I have behind is actually Ayrton's helmet that he gave me. Yeah, let me check. I think it's 1990. He gave me his helmet, and the one on the top is the helmet of my teacher, of Diego. And I'm gonna show you guys. I have this, we're in my office, so I have this picture all the time in front. This is Diego, my teacher, Ayrton, and my dad.
Oh wow!
And
fantastic.
In behind, and I have a lot of memories.
That's nice.
And, I'm very proud that I got to know. I remember Ayrton, just the guy that was eating all my mama's pasta when it was coming home, or the guy that was stealing my chocolate bars. That's kind of the guy that I remember when I was growing up. So, I was shocked that he became who he was. But it's great. It's great to have this kind of relationship with the guy that was a legend.
Did you stay in touch with him into his Formula One days?
Say again?
Did you stay in touch with Ayrton into his Formula One days?
Absolutely. He was kind of like a big brother for me.
Fantastic.
I give you an episode just so that some of the young kid might not really know, deeply who the guy was. But we were obviously, we come from small villages, so we were kind of humble people. And me and Diego, this gentleman, we bought 2 tickets to go and see Ayrton and Monza qualifying. We didn't want to bother him, So he's driving the Lotus, the black Lotus. He qualifies on pole. We're on the top of the garages. And Diego used to call Ayrton, his nickname was Monster. So he's on pole, gets out of the car, he's walking, he's surrounded by, 60, 80 journalists. And Diego shout from the top, "Good job, Monster." Like this, one time. Ayrton stopped, looked back. He got out, came up, picked me and Diego and said, "You guys stay here. Let me do this stuff. 20 minutes of interviews. I'm going to be back." And he drove us back home to my house. And I remember celebrating the pole with my mom and him.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
So,
a lot of special memories.
So after karting then, so how did the move to cars come about? How did that sort of transition develop?
Yeah, the move to cars came quite simply. Me and Alex Zanardi, we were really best friends. His dad was my mechanic.
Yeah.
He helped me out. Alex was racing in Formula 3, and it came about that he was driving for Toyota, Tom's Toyota, in Italy, and there was this opportunity for testing. He called me up. I went testing in Vallelunga, and I remember, basically my dad put together every penny that he had. He gave us, I think I remember it was about $50,000 to share between me and Alex Zanardi to race. And I found another $100,000 of sponsorship, and that was it. I started Formula 3 racing. And I think I was a pretty good marketing guy. I was able, my will for make things happen were bigger than anything else. I have a stack of faxes that I sent out to every single company. I picked up the yellow pages and I called every company within 200 miles of where I lived in Italy that I thought they could help me. And I went and visited every one of them until I was able to put together the budget for me to go racing. Amazing. And I still I have this file folder of faxes and and obviously with help from Ayrton as well. He was, he helped me. He paid a little bit. My dad paid a little bit.
Yeah.
I found my own sponsorship, and I guess that this is what I realized when I look back. There were people that might have maybe had a little bit more talent than me, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5%, but I was not willing to give in. And for me, there was no plan B.
This is what we talked about with the common theme with this podcast, Max, and we've spoken to all different kinds of people. And it's all about, and Terry would talked about it. He said he might not have been the most gifted driver, but he worked and he was very honest with himself. And if he didn't perform or didn't do a good job, he looked at himself in the mirror and said, right, and how can I be better? How can I do more? And I think a lot of it is that work ethic. There's so many good drivers. We're all good drivers, but some of us make it and have a successful career, and some don't. And a lot of it really comes down to that work ethic, how much you want it, and how what it's like in the sport. All the way through your career, you're constantly juggling. You're trying to position yourself to get the right drive, to be in the right get yourself in the frame. And it never stops, does it? All the way through your career, you've got to keep working and pushing and you know, trying to find the opportunities.
I mean, at the end of the day, what I realize is that even now when we're talking about difference of talent, I raced versus Michael Schumacher in karting many times. Obviously, versus as well a guy like Jos Verstappen. Yeah, they were better than me. But I realized that maybe if back then I thought that they were 40% better or 30% better, the difference must have been only 5%, 3%.
Yeah.
And this is what I came to realize later on, that with my work ethic, in my best day and in their worst day, I could beat them.
Yeah.
You know, in their best day versus my best day, maybe I would have finished third, but I was not going to finish 25th.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the difference, you know. And I always felt that, again, you know, I was always very honest with myself, and I had a guy like Ayrton guiding me, because I remember very clearly after my second year in Formula 3, we were getting, you know, trying to put things together to go and do GP2 F3000, and Ayrton told me, Max, you have not won enough. The higher you're gonna go, you're gonna face all the challenges, and the opportunity for you to perform are gonna be fewer. So you gotta be prepared. You don't raise up your game just to do it. You go there to perform and deliver. And I kept that very clearly in my brain. You know, especially, you know, I made a couple of mistakes, especially when I went in F1. But when I left and I came to IndyCar, it was I kept in what he always told me in my mind, that it was like, you never have second chance to make first impression.
Yeah.
Deliver. If you're not ready, wait. The most difficult things for a race car driver is say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, let's wait a little bit. Let's not be ready.
Making a note of these.
Yeah. I mean, the Formula One thing, I mean, I think everybody gets romanced by Formula One, and Formula One is the pinnacle. And it's still that today to a degree. But, you know, like you said, when you went there with Arrows, it probably wasn't, it was Arrows, wasn't it? It wasn't.
I don't know if it was called Arrows or Footwork, but it was one Footwork. Of the two names.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were, depending, you know, I think they had to change the name a couple of times because they, you know.
Yeah.
They,
but it's fair to say that they're not on your Christmas card list.
To say that is not say enough, you know.
Well,
what about saying something like this? You know, that when I worked with a guy, basically Jackie Oliver was the owner of the team, and Alan Jenkins was the engineer. And part of it was my fault as well, that I wasn't prepared, but they definitely were. He was there, you know, his business was making money. It was not delivering performance. And to me, my disappointment that I felt, I was just another guy going through the organization, you know, for him to make other plans. And that sucked because it took away, it took away all my love for the sport. You know, at the end of 95, I retired. You know, after I was 24-year-old, after my Formula One season, I retired because I went to Dad and I said, Dad, we don't have Ayrton. I'm alone. You know, we did this. You know, it was a huge disappointment. This is what I try to describe to my kid.
Yeah.
Obviously, F1 is the pinnacle. Nobody can say it. It is the top of the top of the top. But it's the top of the top when you have a chance to be competitive, when you can drive one of those 1, 2, 3 cars that they are at the top.
Yes.
The rest, you know, I tell my kids, I drove in Formula 1.5.
Yeah.
Because I never had I never had a chance. And the frustrating part was that some of the quality of the people that I was working with, it was not Formula 1 level. I realized that you always dream of, you know, I tell the kids like this, there's a mountain. When you're a kid, you always look up to the top. You look up to the top, and the top is Formula One.
Yeah.
I arrived up there. I looked, and it was actually pretty dry, the land around me, and and the reason was mainly because I forgot what Ayrton was telling me. That was make the right move at the right time, and I wanted so bad to go there, and I gave all my savings, everything. I put all my money there, and that was a disappointment. But this is what I learned. I look back at it and I say, thank you, God, that I did that. He helped me so much. He made me tougher. And he made me tougher. And they put me on my knees, and I had the courage of standing back up. And rebuild my career. And it was without that experience, I don't think I would ever been able to become a pro.
Yeah, I had a similar thing, Max. In 2004, I'd done obviously with Bentley in 2003. I did Le Mans in 2004 with Audi, and we came second. And there was an opportunity to join Gentilosi's team in Champ Car. So Nelson Felipe was driving. He left. He was like 19 years old and had no results. I thought, the kid's, he's not experienced. He's not good. There's an opportunity, and it was a kind of an itch I always wanted to scratch. I wanted to do IndyCar or Champ Car, and I went there, and a bit like what you described, I come from a kind of a professional sports car team, and I got there, and I'm like, "Where's the engineer?" And there was like no engineer. The mechanics were kind of like like weekend warriors, and I was like, I suddenly realized, my God, this is not what I expected, or not what because of course it wasn't like when you were racing Champ Car, like in the sort of late 90s, where it was absolutely. I mean, I remember.
No, I completely understand what you say, because it's exactly like when I went in F1. The organization and a team is only as good as the people that it's made of.
Exactly.
And as you said, your experience in Champ Car, or how it was called back then, was poor. Like my experience in F1 was poor. But that didn't represent what the sport is, because the sport is actually something else. Unfortunately, for people like me or you, sometimes we enter from the back door. And when you enter from the back door, you need to be aware. You need to take the consequences as well. And
I think what it did for me, Max, it meant I could tick the box and focus completely on sports car. I felt like I'd ticked that. It wasn't the best experience, but I satisfied my own mind. So I put that away and focused completely on sports cars, and I've gone away from single seaters. And I guess for you, once you've done the Formula One thing, it's something you can say, well, I've done it. I've been a Formula One driver, but I can look at other opportunities. And then you obviously, after that, you did Daytona in 1996, which kind of really launched you. I mean, that's where the Mad Max name came from, right? I mean, it was
Absolutely.
like an epic drive. I mean, it's funny because when I came to America, people were still talking about that. When I came over to the States, and the epic drive that you did in chasing down Wayne Taylor, and you only lost out by a few seconds, but I mean it was still like an amazing drive. But sometimes
it was the closest ever finish back then. I think it was like 32 seconds from the leader.
Yeah.
Things changed after that race, Max. Not least the pit road speed limiter. But just tell us about that race, because that is. When you look at Max Papis, when people talk about your career, that is one of the kind of big key races, isn't it?
Daytona 24-hour 1996. It represents who I am.
Yeah.
I was upset. I was pissed. I wanted to prove the world that I was not the paying driver, and the guy that finished 7 or 8 or 9, whatever, in the Formula One. So when I got my ass on the car, it was too bad for whoever was around me.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna share this with you guys. Obviously, sports car back then was considered the pension plan. So my teammate was Michele Alboreto. He was 40 something. I was 25. So it would be like having nowadays a 16 years old driving for Audi at Le Mans. they liked me because Mr. Piero Ferrari really, fell in love with my style and everything, and he allowed me to go and drive the car with, to drive the 333.
It's a beautiful car as well.
The vehicle was like basically the 333 Ferrari. It took 10 years to beat for Audi to beat our lap record at Mosport. It was years ahead. Formula One engine beat a V12, but the most things, this is what I learned. I was pissed with the word. I was. I wanted to prove a point, and when they put me in the car, I really used all that energy, and I kept in my mind, there are two things you need to do: is prove that you are a humble badass, and that's what I did. I went out there, and they stuck me in the car with 2.5 hours to go because they thought that everything was lost. And I gave it all. Yep. The amazing thing is this, that I don't know if you guys know, but it could have been something that maybe you guys would have never even remembered, because I ran out of gas on my in-lap with a Ferrari. If that would have happened 28 seconds before, we would have not even been here talking about it. And sometimes things happen at the right time, and I knew that I reminded myself, Max, your plan B was working at McDonald's. Make plan A work. Make plan A work. Make plan A work. And I kept that in my mind every time.
So Max,
I became
was that your first sports car race then?
Ever.
Really?
Ever.
Wow. Straight into Daytona, straight into a 24-hour race. Wow.
We'll share the link actually on Twitter, because there's a great shot of you going down pit road and everyone's stopping doing pit stops. You're in for that refueling stop, and you're like 150 miles an hour down pit road.
Not a limiter. I asked them, say, are we sure? They say, all right. And I went on the radio and said, guys, I'm coming in. On the banking,
coming in hot.
We had 6th gear. I downshift to 5th, wide open from the banking all the way to pit stall number 1. And I have this clear memory. The owner of the car, Mr. Moretti, the founder of Momo, one of the most charismatic person, with his cigar like this. I'm in the car, strapped in for the pit stop, and he's hiding behind the pit wall with the cigar. And I read on his lips, this mofo is going to destroy my car.
It's a great bit of footage. It's a great bit of footage.
I didn't.
And the Americans love that. They love somebody that's going to put on a show. They love someone that's going to be a charger, which obviously you are. And like, as you said, if you're humble, if you have that kind of mentality where you just want to please people, you want to perform, and you want to kick ass, you're going to go a long way in America. And of course, that's kind of where that really kind of opened the door for you for your kind of, I guess, for the rest of your life, because you're still there today.
Absolutely. It changed my life. It changed my life. It gave me a salary. It gave me opportunity to have a family. And think about coincidence, right? We were driving with Yokohama Tire. The distributor of Yokohama Tire was the guy that had the contract from Toyota to do IndyCar.
Right.
They called me to test the car, Mid-Ohio, under very unfortunate circumstances. Unfortunately, if you remember, there was this guy, Jeff Kosnoff, that he passed. I didn't even know, because I didn't want to go back to open wheel. I was not interested. I was super excited to drive the sports car.
Yes.
And they called me, say, actually, the funny start, Gordon Kopak, I'm sure Gordon, the designer. Yeah. I was in Italy. I landed from Sebring, and I received this call. It's Gordon Kopak, and I switched the phone off. I switched the phone off 3 times, and because I thought it was a friend of mine pranking. And no, actually, it's Gordon Kopak. Would you be interested in testing in IndyCar? And I was like, sir, I don't really. And I showed up. They put me in the car, and then they told me all of this after I learned how everything was. Like there was Jan Magnussen and I. They were. They knew of my sports car situation. They knew that Penske was looking for a driver to substitute Emerson Fittipaldi. So after the test, when I impressed them, they told me that they were gonna fly me to California. That's where the base of Toyota was.
Yeah.
But they flew me there and they locked me in an hotel, so I couldn't get in contact with anyone until I signed the contract. And,
Wow.
and I was like, for me, I still remember, when they called me and they went like, okay, Max, you gotta be kind to us. We can only pay you $300,000 this year. And I went like, I'm not. I left them there. I called my dad. I said, Dad, they're paying $300,000. He said, sign it on a. Is the contract? Is the contract on a toilet paper? Sign it. Sign it. Okay, thank you. But at the same time, my dad told me, tell them, yeah, it's okay. I'll make an effort for this year.
that car, that was the MCI car, wasn't it? You were in the MCI
Absolutely.
car. I mean, what a beautiful car that was. I mean, I remember
it was an amazing organization.
Yeah, but it was Cal Wells, wasn't it? Cal Wells. I mean, and the money that Toyota was spending. I mean, it was just, insane, wasn't it? I mean, they were kind of.
It was the first effort of Toyota in the sport. Honestly, it was Toyota were considered a it was not a non-racing entity.
Yeah.
They did the sports car with Dan Gurney, and then they went into IndyCar.
Yeah.
And just the name, Gordon Kopp. We had Gordon Koppel as the technical director. I had a full test team. We ran 27 races and 32 days of testing. It was a dream coming through for me. And it was everything that I dreamt Formula One to be, and more. And I realized kind of like what a guy like Alonso must have gone through, where he actually found himself in a super competitive team. And that's kind of what I felt when I went to IndyCar. I went, okay, I get it. That's why those guys love Formula One.
Was it a little bit different from the Formula One experience then?
Yeah, a little bit. From mine, it was like, it was ever, when you find yourself in an organization where the things you can do, basically, the only things that you want to do is be the best race car driver you can be, because everything else is taken care.
Yeah.
That was that.
It's like when you think, oh, this needs doing, and then you go in to do it and it's been done. Oh, that needs doing, and then it's okay, it's done. It's like, oh wow, like that
they were always one step ahead.
Exactly.
One step ahead, and they kept telling me all that. And I built such a great relationship with the people in that organization that I still keep nowadays. Like I told you, Gordon Koppel is a legend. I love him. Toyota, they hired me to do NASCAR later on.
Yeah.
Great relationship that they are still alive nowadays. So
yeah.
It's again, it's sometimes things happen. I always say like this: many times people see in you what you don't see in yourself, and you just need to have the patience and you need to have that grinding will. I had that.
Yeah.
Even because there was no alternative for me.
Yeah.
Honestly, Plan B was working at McDonald's.
Exactly. So to keep the journey going, you just got to keep grinding and grinding. In the car, you've got to perform. Out the car, you've got to keep working harder. And I mean, I remember the Toyota thing. I mean, you scored Toyota's first pole position. I remember that the car was with the Toyota, as ambitious as it was still unreliable and not always as competitive as because it's a new project. And of course, trying to take on Honda, it's a steep learning curve when you come in from nothing. But I mean, so it must have been kind of, although it was a great opportunity, it must have been a little bit frustrating at times to not quite, have the equipment to challenge, quite at the front.
Like, honestly, the frustration was never an issue for me, because I kept in mind my previous experiences. So I was very grateful. I was just very grateful. And it just there was one moment where Bobby Rahal was retiring, and I remember we were in Detroit at a press conference, and I asked him, say, Bobby, have you choose who is gonna be your substitute? Just literally, I want. He was a hero. Come on, for me, Bobby Rahal, Mario Andretti.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he told me, no, are you available? And I went, no, I have one more year, one year of contract with MCI, but if you would be willing, you're welcome to talk to the owner in Toyota. And he talked to them, and after the 4 months, they released me, and I was the new substitute of Bobby Rahal. And
amazing.
Like
how was that step, Max, going to that team? Was it a big difference, or was it just subtle differences?
Actually, there were large differences because I went from a works organization, Toyota, to a very competitive but more of a privateer team.
Yeah.
In a way, I wouldn't say privateer, but we were supported by customer.
Honda.
Customer, exact customer.
Yeah.
So we were less people, but the quality of people that Rahal had was amazing, and mainly they had the horsepower of the Cosworth engine that propelled us to success. And
was that a big difference? Was the Cosworth a big step forward?
If I tell you, if Ayrton would have been around, I think he would have advised me to stay at Toyota for a while, you know. But I was impatient. I'm not impatient, you know. I still remember going to the team owner, to Cal Wells, and say, Cal, Bobby Rahal would like me to drive for him. You know, what do you think? I had that relationship with my team, with the current team owner, and he told me, I don't believe that I will be able to provide you anything at that level for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And I told him, so what do you think? It's your decision, but I cannot provide you winning equipment. And so it just allowed me to go. If I look back, honestly, with my experience of a 50 years old now, I would have maybe wanted to see that program come through.
Yeah.
Toyota program, but at the same time, it was a great journey, and I was able to contribute, and I was able to win races. When I showed up, I did what I wanted to do. That was winning races in IndyCar.
Yeah.
And relationship with Toyota as well.
Say again?
And you kept the relationship with Toyota, as you've already mentioned, which is, you know, to be able to switch teams and keep that relationship says a lot about you.
Yeah, I always felt that racing is one part of life. You know, you gotta be a complete person. You're a jar of energy, and it's up to how much and you let the energy go out and who you disperse it to. And for me, it was never a doubt that my competitive spirit would have drove me to be in the most competitive car I could, and I was not very political, or I was not calculating. I say, of course, this guy is offering us a car. I go and talk to my team owner. He say, you can go. So what do you do? Go, right? You know,
good times though, Max. I mean, you know, I remember as well, you know, I'm obviously friendly with Dario, but you know, Dario, yourself, Tony, obviously the late Greg Moore. I mean, you know, what a kind of the Brat Pack you were called? I mean, what a great times, all sort of in great teams and in good money, traveling around the world, you know, having a good old laugh. I mean, you know, you must look back at those days and think, you know, what a great time to be, you know, in the sport. I mean, an IndyCar was definitely, or IndyCar, Champ Car, whatever it was at the time, was definitely in its peak, because you still had, you know, the alcoholic drinks, you still had the tobacco, there was the big money, the cool money, Forsyth, you know, with players. I mean, it was really kind of in its heyday, wasn't it? I mean, at least you're a part of it, and it's probably one of its peaks. You know, Penske was still involved with obviously with his own car as well. So what a great time.
Amazing. And it's funny that, you know, on my picture I have on my desk, I have my dad, and on the other side, it's me, Dario, and Tony.
Awesome.
And it really represents, it's quite simple. We were all driven by the same passion for the sport. and we were extremely competitive. But at the same time, we were all away from home. You know, I'm Italian, Dario Scottish, Tony Brazilian, Greg Canadian, and there was no hospitality. You had to see each other at the track. So we created that bond, but the bond was just outside the racetrack. You know, we were very friendly outside the racetrack, but on the track, I remember I'm crazy, amazing battle. And as well, I remember not talking to Dario, that is really one of my best friends, for 3 months, because I knocked him off the track in Elkhart Lake, and we didn't. Yeah, that's it. He didn't want to talk to me anymore, and I don't blame him. So we built a great relationship, and I kind of look at what we were doing a little bit like when I look at the picture of James Hunt and Claire Regazzoni, where these people, when I was there in Champ Car, you knew deeply inside that you don't have 100 feet runoff area.
Yeah.
If you crash, maybe you wake up somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I think there was that level of respect and that level of love for the sport that kind of made us look at the guy next to Dario or Greg to say, dude, you have the size of a truck to do that.
Yeah.
You know, you never told him because you competed against him, but you knew that you had that kind of respect, and I kind of feel that that sort of romantic way, not romantic, basically, it's the way that we looked at the sport with respect, but at the same time knowing that whoever wanted to do that was a little bit out there.
Yeah.
You know, and so we found maybe a little bit of friendship outside because we knew that that we were all a little different.
Yeah. Yeah.
You talk about this jar of energy, Max, and I think in those days you were maybe a little quieter publicly, but then by the time you got to trucks and to NASCAR, you were wearing your heart on your sleeve, and you were kind of loved for that. That kind of your personality was. I mean, look at some of the YouTube videos; they're absolutely hilarious. You really did. You got out of the car, and that jar of emotion was open every time. So you have to. We'll share some of the videos on Twitter as we build up to sharing the podcast.
I mean, Italians are quite reserved, aren't they? I mean, they don't
Yeah,
really
of course,
show
yeah.
their emotions. You know, I mean.
But an Italian in America showing his emotion really seemed to fit quite well with the next part of the chapter, didn't it?
Yeah, there is one Max with maximum intensity, and there is one Max that wears a different kind of hat. Yeah. And the guy that sometimes you saw when I got out of the car of NASCAR or whatever, that's the Max driving the car. Yeah. The passion, the drive, that, and there was it's kind of an antithesis. There was these two people in the same person, you know, a very calculated person, a very pragmatic decision-making guy. This is so difficult to explain, but like, you know, I was calculated, precise, but I enjoyed driving into turn one at Michigan at 245. So there was this antithesis of like the calculated person to the guy that I don't think the regular people like to turn in at 240 miles per hour in the corner. I liked it. You know, I was actually, that was what I was looking for.
It's really funny because I've talked to Stephanie Hansen about this, but you know, European drivers generally have done incredibly well on ovals. When they've gone to the States, you know, the people think, oh, these Europeans, they're going to struggle on the ovals. Yet, you know, generally, you know, we talked about it before, and I know you were incredibly good on ovals. Dario, obviously, you know, Dan Weldon, bless him, you know, just absolutely excelled on the ovals. And maybe it's because it's such a new experience that you treat it with respect and you look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. But I'm not really sure why that is, but I mean, obviously when you went to NASCAR as well, I mean, it's like, you know, on the oval races, you've always done well.
I give you my perspective on it. It's like us Europeans showing up on oval racing is we are a white canvas. So think about you sitting in your go-kart the first time when you're 12 years old. You're a white canvas. You know, you don't have any preconcept. You do what you feel. You do what your teacher tells you. Put that with a 25 years experience of racing, and that's the result. That's the reason why some of us did really well on oval, because we were not polluted, by the excuses of the sport in general. And I think that speaks tons of that. I really believe that's the main reason, because you had the pure ability, but no preconcept. Like there were some other guys that I remember on an oval, they were, if the car didn't have that setup didn't have that front wing angle, they were not driving it.
Yeah.
And for us for me was different. And I think that really contributed a lot to be open-minded, and be slightly different compared to everyone else. And I really think that that's the main reason, because some of the American guys, is their bread and butter. Racing on an oval, is what they grow up with. We live here in North Carolina. Every Wednesday there is a local dirt track on an oval.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't even be able to compete against these kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the end, I think that what I described to you before is what allowed us to be competitive.
Yeah. It's when you see these NASCAR guys, I mean, they're just, they tend to look at them and they're sometimes a little bit stocky or whatever. And you think, those guys, they're just kind of like, they're not really serious about it. But, those guys can drive, can't they? I mean, we've had it before when people like Tony Stewart and Jimmy Johnson and those guys have come over and done Daytona. So they're kind of stepping into our world, as it were. And they get in the car and they're awesome. I mean, they're just as quick and it kind of just shows that these guys are super, super talented. And again, and you've experienced it firsthand with the racing that you've done in NASCAR, even on the road courses, which, as a road course racer, you would say, well, this is my territory. But those guys are still, bloody good drivers. And I mean, I'd like to touch a little bit on NASCAR, because I think, you've obviously, you've just about raced every kind of NASCAR, whether it be Busch, Nationwide, Cup, trucks. I mean, you've done it all. And as Paul said, you as a European driver, you've had the most starts. And, for a European to race in NASCAR is a hell of an achievement, because, we've spoken to Jason Plato and we spoke to a few different drivers that have all wanted to try and crack that kind of that NASCAR racing and never had the opportunity. And you've been able to do it and be able to do it successfully. I mean, how was the whole NASCAR experience for you? I mean, people sort of say, it's a closed book. It's this, it's that, the other. If you're not from the right part of America, you're not going to be successful. Well, for you being a European, was that, do you see that as a big barrier, or do you think you were given the opportunity, a fair crack at the whip, as it were?
I would say that, I enter NASCAR at the right time. I was welcomed by everyone, but mainly because they knew my persona first. They welcome the way I was, that the way I am. There is they knew that I was not gonna go in there with looking down at people, actually looking up at them. So I got welcome from day one, and I try to compare it with we're doing this podcast and a lot of English people are going to listen to this, so yeah. It's almost like looking at BTCC, right? You look at the guy, Jason Plato, you mentioned it twice. Yeah. The guy is a legend, man. He's a legend, but if you go to Italy or France, they might not even know who the guy is.
Yeah.
But for you that you're there, or for me that I knew, I saw him driving, you well know that you were actually lucky that they didn't put him against you, because it would have been tough to beat him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah,
it's the same things for this guy in NASCAR. We don't know them in general because they are, they are specialized. They do these things here, but their level of talent, it's amazing because is basically, I compare driving a NASCAR car to Sebastian Loeb driving a rally car at Corsica. You are right on the limit, 1 inch from the barrier, and the P2 is 2/10 behind you. And you ask him, you say, how can you do that? You know, you went. I mean, first of all, how didn't you crash? And how the second is 2/10 from you? You should be 10 seconds, right? Because you miss one downshift and it's 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And these guys, they do everything, and the same things in NASCAR. Like they maximize, and they are unbelievable improviser with precision. You know, that's the amazing things. Like, and they don't look at the eyes of the European guys in general as talented, because on TV, oval racing seems easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's nothing. And I tell people, think about cops. Every 8 seconds, with the track that changes every time. Is cops easy? No, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Do that every 8 seconds for 2.5 hours with tire dag and 25 people around you.
Yeah.
Or 35 people. Right?
I think it's amazing when you see places like Bristol, you know, those kind of tiny little tracks, and you see all the, you know, 40-odd cars all on this little track, and they're all kind of pushing and nudging. And I mean, it's
nothing different. It's nothing different than us racing in Monaco or in Pau.
I guess so. Yeah.
It's the same feel.
Yeah.
Same feel. The only thing is that is intense. It's like that.
So when you first drove a NASCAR, then did it feel completely alien? Did it feel? I mean, such a big car, lots of horsepower, probably not great brakes. Was it kind of? Did you feel kind of in tune with it, or was it a bit strange?
I get it was. I started testing the NASCAR car when I was driving for Corvette Racing, and they did exactly the reason why I was testing for Hendrick Motorsport, the team of Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson. It was because I was a white canvas. They wanted to try new things. It was a new car, the whatever it was called, I think it was called the Car of Tomorrow. So they wanted a complete neutral guy to go there and drive. The things that shocked me about NASCAR, it was a while I didn't drive an open, you know, something with real power. And I remember the feel of the champ car, that down the straight, the car never stopped. No matter if the straightaway was 1 mile, 2 mile, 500 feet, the car kept going. And stock car was the same. I was shocked. Like, it was the only other car that I drove that it stopped when you let off the throttle. Because you understand what I mean? Sometimes even in Le Mans with the greatest car, you're wide open and you feel you're going nowhere, even if you're going 300. Yeah. And the engine sounded kind of steady. This thing kept going until you let off from the throttle. And it was the best way that I can describe NASCAR is exactly like when you watch Talladega Night, or when you watch Days of Thunder, that you have Tom Cruise showing up at the track, driving the car, going really fast, and then the guy who actually drives the car every day, he goes out and say, now try to do that with your own car. Let me explain you why. The reason why is that the value is in the human being. Like there was no data when you race the car. So in order for you to have, there is no data, no nothing in the car when you raced. So you had to know what you wanted, because there was not an engineer that could tell you, okay, you need to let off 10 feet later, trail brake, do that. And the human capital is gigantic. That's why these guys are paid millions and millions. Yeah. It's almost like going back to the karting days, where you can make a difference. And that's kind of like the same feel, but with a very, I always say, the car, they're gigantic, 3,600 pounds, but we tune them, changing half of a degree of the brake scoop angle under the car. So that tells you how precise the car were. So they might be 3,600 pounds car, but everything is so meticulous thought after that is as far as you can think from being any mediocrity on it. And Hendrick Motorsport, we have 450 employees.
Yeah, amazing.
It's we have a wind tunnel, 2 7-post rig. So it's a proper organization, and it's just a different form of racing. It's almost it's kind of difficult to comprehend. As again, it's almost like saying British touring car. People love it. They put up a great show, but you go to another nation, they might not even know who they are.
Yeah, but it's great. I mean, within the US, I mean, it's great racing. I mean, you can massive respect for the racing. But again, with Max, with the I mean, you've also had, your sports car career. I mean, it's funny because, I guess what kind of launched you in America was that race at Daytona. And you've always kind of had a sports car career kind of running alongside everything else you've done, whether it be Champ Car, IndyCar, or even NASCAR. You've always been racing sports cars. So, I mean, obviously, you've done Le Mans, you've won Daytona, you've obviously been, with Corvette, and you've been successful there. I mean, I remember the 2002 Daytona that you won because I came second. So I spent most of the race trying to chase you down. We were in the Riley Scott, which kept, its lights kept going out, and we had to keep pitting to get the lights working and stuff. I think you beat us by about 7 laps, but I remember having a pretty good battle with you because you were in the Dallara Judd, weren't you? And I was kind of hoping that the thing might break down, but it didn't. And you got, I think it's your second Rolex, I think, wasn't it? Was that your second win? So I still haven't got one. So I mean, maybe one year, maybe one time. So we'll see.
No, but I tell you, you're 100% correct. The reason why I kept racing in the sports car is because I always believe the sports car is pure, and the sports car is for racers. And it was my way to detox from all the other bullshit.
Yeah.
That's why I went every year to race Daytona. I wanted to race Le Mans. I raced Daytona 21 times and Le Mans 11 times.
Yeah.
And at the end, it was my life best.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it, but when you became disposable and the sport changed, like in Champ Car or other, I always had sports car. Go to, and it was not a second option. It was actually, if I had to take a step back, honestly, I would have after IndyCar, I should have gone full in and look at sports car like my real job.
Yeah.
But to me, I was too pure to look at it. I felt it was my place to detox.
Yeah.
So I loved it. And I almost couldn't take it to, I couldn't take with the intensity that I should have done because I don't know.
Well, I like the camaraderie, working with the other drivers as a team, kind of playing to each other's strengths and trying to help them and they help you and trying to work as a team. That's what I really like about the sports car stuff. But I mean, of course, you won the championship in Grand Am. Was that the first year of Grand Am with Ganassi?
Honestly, I don't remember. I think it was the first year of Daytona Prototype.
Yeah, that's right.
I won their first. I won Ganassi first ever sports car championship.
Yeah.
And that was my goal. Obviously, Ganassi has always been seen as the Ferrari of or the McLaren in IndyCar or in America in general.
Absolutely.
You have Ganassi and Penske.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always wanted both. Yeah, I always wanted to. Every time I went to Ganassi to visit them in Indianapolis, they have this wall of fame where only the picture of the champion are there, and right. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be there. And when they called me to do it, I thought I have one goal. I want to put my face there. And at the end of the season, I took the picture and I put myself on the side of Alex Zanardi, Jimmy Vasser, Montoya, and I looked at it, like, not bad for a kid that's born in Barasso Varese with 600 people village. Eh? It's actually, I went like, that's good. Be proud of it.
That's
No,
brilliant.
that is good.
So, Paul, have you any questions for Max?
We had a question from Phil Clark on Twitter, actually. He wanted to know your thoughts on having the career you'd had. Talking of going backwards, Alonso's going back to Formula One. What are your thoughts on that? Can you kind of put that in perspective with, would you have gone back to Formula One if you'd have had another opportunity, 10 years later, for example?
First of all, I gotta tell you this. I got to know Alonso a little bit better in the last 4 months, and the guy is a phenomenon. I mean, it would have been injustice for the sport not to see him driving or in Champ Car or in IndyCar or in F1 again, because the guy is on a different planet. He's so fast and and such an intense person. How I look at it is that does he need to do that? No. Does he want to do it? I think so, because we are all driven by the competitive spirit, and I think it might surprise a lot of people, because I can definitely tell you that the guy has an unbelievable ethic, and yes, the answer to the listener is that if I would have had another opportunity in a competitive team, I would have gone there to prove to Jackie Oliver that I was not the ass that he thought I was.
Yeah.
Apparently, he's done the fitness test that the Formula One drivers do when they get their super license, and I was reading earlier, and he's fitter at the age he is now, knocking on the door of 40, than any other time he's done that test, that fitness test. That's quite incredible.
I mean, age is a number. Age honestly is the number. Like, there is a time where your eyesight is going to become an issue. But nowadays, a guy like Alonso, I mean, he's in his prime. And if I would be, Hamilton and the other guys, I would start thinking about it, because the guy is coming for them.
Yeah. Old guys rule, Paul. Old guys rule. That's what it comes down to.
I'm not denying that. I just like the fact that all of a sudden, there's a lot of argument out there to say that he's taken a seat away from a young gun. And if somebody had done that back in the day, when Michael Schumacher or Damon Hill or someone else had a chance, then they would never have been on the scene. But where are we in this world where you have to be 17 or 18 to be making the headlines? I think it's good that we're back in that experience.
No, I believe I completely hear you. What you say is that what's special about racing is that no matter if you are white, pink, black, yellow, Italian, Japanese, American, it's all based on performance. And there is no limitation of entering the sport. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Was it tough for me that I came from 600 people village, no background? Yeah. Did I make it happen? Yeah. Did I went all the way to race for Ferrari or McLaren? No. Yeah. Did I make a good living and I created my own space? Yes. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Is like, for me, when I hear argument, he's taking away space from a young guy, I tell this young guy, go to work, bro. Yeah. Yeah. To work. If you were as good as him, you would have had his job. So stop talking, take the Twitter away. Yeah. Nobody gives a shit to, if you are smiling or if you have 100,000 Instagram, follower or not. Everything is a consequence of your ability and your results on track. Yeah. Everything else comes second.
So Max, it's also is that notion of a moment in time, isn't it? I think Jake Humphrey put earlier that if Mika Hakkinen had come back like they were talking of doing in 2007, then we wouldn't have had Lewis Hamilton. But it's more the argument you wouldn't have had him in 2007. You'd have got him in 2008, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. So Max, you've got two boys. Are they destined for the racetrack, or are you trying to steer them in another direction?
I steer them whatever they want. Right now, the two boys, we are in my company, MPI, steering wheel company. Like they are on the back boxing because they need to earn. I'm paying them $7 an hour, and they want to buy a new phone. So both the 10 and the 12 years old, they're there on the back working. The 10-year-old is a huge motocross fan and motorcycle like daddy. I love those two things. The older one, big into basketball, really big, super focused on it. So let's put it like this. My dad and Ayrton and people never told me that I had to be a race car driver. I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Mainly because I sucked at everything else. I wanted to be a soccer player, and I sucked. I wanted to be a basketball player, I sucked. When I sat in the go-kart, I was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I was surprised myself. I went like, maybe that's what God wants me to do. And my two kids, I'm definitely not a father that will go above and beyond to create things that they don't exist. I'm going to give them a platform to express themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that the young one has a God gift. I took him to the go-kart track. He's quite good, but I'm definitely not going to be the dad that is going to go out there. I'm not going to be the little league dad. If he has the talent, I will support him and guide him and make sure that he has the opportunity. And if it has to be, it will be. For sure, I can make his life easier than mine. Yeah.
So Max, tell us a little bit about MPI then. So what are you up to these days then? So I mean, obviously I've seen all the stuff. You're doing a lot of the steering wheels and stuff. You're doing a lot of stuff in NASCAR, right?
Absolutely. Like, I'm not gonna bore you guys or the listener, but I'm gonna be very brief. Look at MPI like when I came in 1996, how we look at Momo. It's a steering wheel company. I started it from scratch.
Yeah.
We have full production, about 30 minutes for Momo used to be. And I started it from my garage. The reason why I started MPI, it was because I crashed with the NASCAR car in Kentucky, and I broke my wrist because we didn't really understand why. And we put some thinking on it, and we realized that basically the steering wheel was so rigid that all the load came into my hand and broke my wrist. Mm-hmm. Went back to Italy, worked with some of the, basically to make some money in the beginning in 96 when I was driving for Momo and for Giampiero, I was his gopher. I was delivering stuff and everything. So I learned what everyone was. Went back to Italy, about 2004, linked back to the people I knew in the past, start producing 20, 30, 40 steering wheel a year. Now we are a multi-million-dollar company. We have 72 different products.
Wow.
We produce steering wheel for both. We are IndyCar champion. We are 15 times NASCAR champion, V8 supercar. And you will see MPI, when we sell over 30,000 steering wheel a year and accessories worldwide. We don't have a distributor yet in England, but we will. And you will see it for all the kids that all the people are listening, by the end of the season, you will see all our major MPI product into sim product. We already have, we are going to do that for myself.
Yeah.
And I did that in the beginning for me. So we're going to do that. And I'm really excited about the future of the company. And it's a proof again that if you want to make something happen, it can happen.
Yeah.
But, I'm wearing 3 hats and I work. Yesterday I worked 14 hours, but I'm happy. I'm happy, and I'm actually looking at it when I talk to you. This is Scott Dixon IndyCar steering wheel that we developed, and so I'm proud that I learned everything and I applied it into the sport and I applied into the business, and here we go. Maybe one day, we can talk about other things.
I like it because we have a lot of young kids and young karters and things that listen to the podcast. So, I think what it gets across is just the work ethic that, you've got to be a good driver, but you've got to, whatever you want to do to achieve it and to be successful, you've got to work at it, and nothing beats hard work. So it's great to.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
You nailed it, guy. Yeah. You nailed it. It's first you need to know if you have the God gift, because if you don't have it,
wasting your time.
You need to be a fisherman or something else. Exactly. But if you have a God gift and you want to nurture that, there is room for a lot of people to be pro. There's not just those 12, 14 places in F1.
Yeah.
You can race in rally, you can be an engineer, you can race in British touring car.
Yeah.
There are many opportunities, many avenues, and
now sim racing.
Yeah.
And now sim racing, you can have money, good sim money in sim racing. I think we should all go sim racing.
Absolutely. Like I'm a big believer. That's honestly what I told my kid, that if I was him, he's 10, I would really look at it, because I know guys that they make, $100,000 sim racing, and it's just the beginning. So I believe that in the near future, not in the near future, it's a present that is growing, and is growing very, very quick.
And these kids, when they get in a real race car, they're always quick. There's definitely a correlation between sim, being good on the sim and actually driving. So, I mean,
it's the only sport. If you look at it, look at it as this. My kids play FIFA, or they play the NBA game. To play an NBA game does not mean you're a good NBA player. But to play something racing, you use the same mechanism.
Yeah, exactly.
Of a real car.
Yeah.
And it's I didn't realize that, but it's triggering. Is using the same mechanism, the same intuition. Yeah. Obviously, you don't have the fear factor, but when you're 16, there is no fear factor anyway.
Are you enjoying the sim racing? Have you been enjoying the sim racing in lockdown? Because you've been pretty active, right?
Dario called me, Tony Canan called me. Let's put it this: 4 months ago, I didn't even know how to pronounce sim racing, and as usual, I ended up third in Indianapolis, the last race I did. So I went from, not knowing anything and being in the way to kind of get some satisfaction. So it's not bad for an old dog.
So Max, I've got some quick fire questions for you. So I'm going to ask you just a few questions. So just basically got to come the first thing that comes into your mind. Okay, nothing rude. So now I've just realised you might not know this particular shows, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So Top Gear or Fifth Gear? They're two car shows.
Top Gear.
Okay. IndyCar or NASCAR?
NASCAR.
Beach holiday or adventure holiday?
Say again?
Beach holiday or adventure holiday?
Adventure holiday, all the way.
This is it. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Dogs, yeah. Oversteer or understeer?
Oversteer.
Oversteer. Foyt or Earnhardt?
Foyt.
And V6 or V8?
V12.
Fair enough. Right, I've got a pass-along question from Mr. Fullerton. So the pass-along question from Terry is, what one thing would you have done differently in your career? If there's one thing you could change, what would you have done differently?
It's good YouTube viewing. It's probably not as good on the radio, but he is thinking. This is thinking time. It's a good question.
Is there a number of things?
Ask more advice.
Ask more advice.
Ask more advice and listen more.
When did you not listen? Where's your touch point? What are you thinking about when you're saying listen more?
Listen more is, when I say that, is that if I would have listened to more to what Ayrton told me, to what some of the other, it's listen more and something else, create my circle of trust. When Ayrton was gone, I lost my circle of trust.
Yeah.
And if he would have been there, I'm sure I would have listened more. That's the best way I can say.
Good.
And
good advice. Good advice. So Max, question for our next guest. you might even know him, but you do know him, but I can't tell you who it is yet. So
let me think. A question would be, would you have been willing to give up 10 Christmas in a row to a test on the best car that you could, in a way? Like, what you would have been willing to give up?
okay,
To
I'll put that to our next
one, to get one test in the car that you want.
Okay. Like the Arrows Formula One car.
I can tell you what I would have gave up.
It sounds like you gave up quite a lot as it was.
I wanted, if I go back and I could have worked with a guy like Terry Fullerton.
Yeah.
The way that he is, the mentor he is today. I know why my friend Ayrton talked so highly of him, because I got to see a little bit what he does nowadays. And I can only imagine what an amazing right-hand man and advisor he could have been.
Yeah.
If I would have had the chance to have him right here with me.
Yeah. He's just one of those guys that he commands respect, and the way that he talks, you just want to listen. You just want to soak it all up and just listen to everything he's saying. And you're right. If you were a kid and you had that advice, it would stand you in such good stead. So it was great listening to him and talking to him. But Max, thanks for being on the podcast. It's been really great. I mean, we've not really had a chance to speak before very much, and obviously it's a great story. I've really enjoyed listening to your story, and you've done just about everything. I mean, when I was going through your kind of CV and looking at it, I was just amazed how much racing you've actually done. And big respect to you, because you say starting from nothing, and you're still going strong now. And
racing go-kart.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you. So, are you still in terms of, are you officially retired, or is the door still open?
Absolutely not. The day I retire is going to be when I go under the ground.
Okay. So everything's still open.
I am the USA Rotax Master and X30 Master Champion in go-kart.
Really?
Yeah, and I will invite all of you guys, including Terry, hopefully is listening. Yeah. We replicated Parma, 10 minutes from where I live in Morrisville, in a beautiful location called GoPro Motorplex. Okay. I helped them to design, and the track is the exact replica of Parma. Wow. And that's what I run almost every week. And again, I'm absolutely not retired. If there is an opportunity, you better watch out, because I'm coming.
I'm coming for you.
I pick and choose.
Brilliant. I've got to say, if you've been listening to this on the podcast, do check it out on YouTube. This is our 13th podcast now, and the stories just keep coming thick and fast. And Guy does a lot of the research in the background of this, and then we discussed what car to wheel in the virtual studio, and you nailed it this time, Guy, didn't you, with the MCI car? Because I was going to go with the Arrows.
I wouldn't say so. Like, let's follow this. I'm glad that Mr. Jackie Oliver is in vacation right now, because I would definitely not invite him at my Christmas party.
Thanks again, Max.
Okay. Live and learn. It's fine.
Well, great. Thanks, Max. Thank you so much. And, we'll take you up on that karting challenge. Next time in the US, I'll give you a shout, and I'd love to come and check out the kart track, and you can show me the way around.
I don't think I can show you the way around, but I would love to welcome you. I will give you 1 hour of practicing alone, and then equal weight.
Coming for you.
Then we're going.
Of course. Equal weight and 25 laps, new set of tires, and we see.
Perfect. Thanks, Max.